but the heaviness pressing against Ms. Thu's chest refused to lift. She sat motionless, staring at a faded photograph, edges curled and worn like autumn leaves caught in time. It was all they had now, proof that someone, somewhere, had once cradled little Tu Tien in their arms. "Mom," Tien said gently, almost afraid to break the fragile air between them. "Just try to hold things together for now. Maybe talk to Jack, show him the photo, make an appointment. He might actually believe us this time." Ms. Thu's lips trembled, eyes still fixed on the photograph. "You think he'll help us again? Last time, no matter what I said, he thought I was making it up. He looked right through me." Tien reached into his coat and pulled out a creased paper. Written across it in shaky blue ink was an address. "But now we have this. An address, a photo. He can't ignore that." She blinked. "It's far, isn't it? Over 100 kilometers. We don't even have bus fare. No car, nothing." Tien sighed and reached out. "Give me your phone, Mom. I'll call him." Her hands hesitated, trembled, as if handing him the last of her faith. She passed him the phone like surrendering a dying prayer. He found the number still saved. His thumb hovered above it. Fear kicked in, fast and tight. What if he thinks it's another lie? What if he doesn't even answer? But then, click, the line connected. "Jack," Tien's voice cracked. A pause. Then Jack's voice, wary, distant. "Yes, what is it?" "I just want a moment of your time. It's about Tu Tien. We found something. A photo. An address. We believe we found her real family." Silence. Then Jack spoke, cold as frost. "I told you, if you really have the address, if you'll take me there, then call me. But if this is more of the same, don't waste my time." "No," Tien insisted, voice pleading. "It's real this time. My mom didn't find this alone. I helped her. Just look at the photo." "Please." There was a long breath on the other end. Then Jack's voice softened, barely. "Even if that's true, she's missing now. Tu Tien's gone. I don't know where she is." And then nothing. The line went dead. Ms. Thu clutched the photo and address, sliding them back into her coat as if hiding treasure. Her hands were shaking, her heart louder than her thoughts. Tien clenched his jaw. "If we just had a little money, we could find her parents. And maybe then Jack would help us again." "He won't even see me anymore," Ms. Thu whispered. "I've tried." "Then what do we do?" Tien's voice broke. "No place to live, no money, just this photo. Is that all we have left?" Silence stretched, wrapping around them like a cold sheet. Then, from the doorway, a child's voice pierced through. "Mom, look, isn't that Dad?" Tien turned. A figure stepped in from the street, the wind behind him like a forgotten memory. An older man, ragged, unshaven, eyes hollow, smelling faintly of ash and cold tea, his father. "Dad," Tien said, almost under his breath. "Sit." The man grunted, dropped into the nearest chair. "I'm hungry," he mumbled. "Came in for some pho. You seen Tu Tien today?" He scratched at his beard, oblivious to the tremor that passed between the others in the room. And just like that, another piece of the puzzle walked in from the cold, uninvited, unexpected, and maybe, just maybe, the crack in fate they needed. She was at the farm this morning, then vanished. No one knows where she went. Tien's fist clenched, his voice sharp with accusation. "You say you care, but you left us with nothing. We're sleeping on floors while you pretend to be the hero." His father's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. "I do care, but don't drag Tu Tien into this. She's been through enough with you two." "She saved me," Tien snapped. "She gave me a roof, a chance, and now she's gone. That matters to me." The old man stood, shoulders stiff with age and pride. "You're a man now. Stop chasing ghosts, get a job, let her go." Tien's eyes dropped to the bowl of noodles before him. The broth steamed between them, thick with silence, regret, and words unsaid. Tu Tien was somewhere out there, alone. and the only thread left was a fragile photo and a scribbled address that pointed more than 100 kilometers into nowhere. The photo shook in Twi's hands, trembling like it had a soul of its own. The corners had curled from years of worry, the edges stained with time and sweat. But the center remained, haunting and real. A baby swaddled in worn floral cloth, a young woman with almond eyes behind her, and a sign, just barely legible, naming a place no one visited anymore. "Look at this, Mom," Tien whispered, as if afraid to wake old ghosts. "She's the one from the letter. Jack has to believe us now." Tui's breath hitched. Her eyes locked on the address beneath the faded ink. "That's over 100 kilometers away," she murmured. "We'd be walking days without a scent." She glanced at her sandals, cracked, thin-soled things that barely held together. Her ankles throbbed. Her spine ached beneath years of work and silence. "No one will lend us money, least of all Jack." Their words dissolved into silence. A dog barked outside, then whimpered. The wind scratched against the tin roof like a reminder of how small they were. Tien picked up his battered phone, the screen webbed with tiny fractures. He scrolled to the name, Jack. It blinked back at him, a name that once meant belonging. Now it pulsed with all the things that had gone wrong. He hovered his thumb over the button. "Should I call him?" Tui didn't respond. She was rubbing the edge of the photo, her thumb wearing away the ink like she could rub away time itself. Then, click. The ringtone rang out, taut as a wire pulled between desperation and dignity. "Hello?" Jack's voice came through, cold and cautious. Tien froze. Tui leaned in, her voice a whisper, raw and trembling. "Tell him the truth, all of it. Let me talk, Jack." Her voice trembled, coated in a tenderness she hadn't felt in months. "Please, just a moment. I've uncovered something about Tu Tien's birth parents." There was a breathless pause. Then Jack's voice cut through like cold steel, low, steady, exhausted. "I told you, Miss Thu, unless you're walking me right to them, I'm not coming. No more riddles." "It's not a riddle," she murmured, desperation peeking through the cracks. "I have a photograph, a name, a commune. Even Tien thinks it's real. I'm looking for her now. She's gone, Jack. Disappeared. We can't wait on this." Click. The line went dead. The silence afterward was the kind that bruised. Tui stared at the phone, breath shallow as though the words had knocked the air clean from her lungs. "It's always not now," she whispered. "Always too damn late." Tien didn't speak. He held the faded photo in his hand like it might turn to dust. His jaw tensed, eyes scanning the unfamiliar landscape frozen in the image. "This could be it," he finally said. "Our last shot." Tui nodded. Her voice was barely a thread. "But how do we get there? We don't have a car, no cash, nothing but a scribbled address and the hope we're not fools chasing ghosts." This wasn't about a journey across land. It was about crossing the chasm between guilt and courage, between falsehoods long believed and the weight of truth finally uncovered. The real story here isn't how you get there. It's whether you're willing to go, barefoot if you must, when the truth finally comes calling. Because when everything else falls away, what remains is the quiet choice to move forward, no matter who's watching, no matter who still believes. Some of you know that hollow feeling. When the truth arrives too late to fix what's broken, but just in time to remind you what still matters. This part of their story isn't about clues or maps. It's about swallowing pride, admitting you need the one person you hurt most and hoping they haven't changed the locks. It's about how distance isn't just a measure of miles, but of pain, of all the unsaid things, of the years lost between arguments and silence. The rain hadn't started, but the air was thick with waiting. Jack stood alone on the creaking veranda of his weather-worn house, eyes locked on the field that stretched out like a wound he couldn't heal. The mist hadn't lifted. It wrapped the morning in a quiet grief. Inside, the kettle began to cry softly. Baby Hans shifted in his crib, his tiny fists clenched in dreams untouched by betrayal. But Tu Tien hadn't come back. Not after the envelope, not after the photo, not after that final silence that sank into Jack's chest like a blade left behind. "She ran," whispered a voice deep within him, "because she's scared." "No," said another voice, quieter, meaner, "because she didn't believe in you enough to stay." He hated both voices, but they were his. And then the memories came, jagged and out of order. Tu Tien, that first day, how her eyes flicked around like a cornered animal's, her hands folding towels with unnecessary care, the way she'd never eat the last bite, and that scar on her hip, long, quiet, a history she never spoke aloud, even to herself. And now she was gone. But maybe not lost, not yet. She never spoke much about where she came from, but her silence wasn't empty. It filled the room in other ways, in the way she folded her napkin, always corner to corner, or how she stared a moment too long at running water, as if it reminded her of something she couldn't name. Jack noticed these things, though he never said so. That morning he found her old apron hanging by the kitchen door, frayed, faded, and heavy with memories. The faint scent of mint and smoke clung to it, hers unmistakably. A jagged tear near the pocket had been mended with crooked green thread, a repair made in haste but with care. Jack ran his fingers across it slowly, like a man touching something sacred he didn't believe he deserved. Then Mrs. Lai appeared, sudden as breath and still as judgment. Her voice was low, dry, carrying the weight of a woman who had buried more stories than she had ever told. "Men always search the scraps women leave behind," she said, eyeing the apron, "as if answers are sewn into the seams." Jack looked up, startled. "She's gone, Mrs. Lai." "She's not gone," the old woman said, correcting him gently but firmly. "She's seeking. There's a difference. Women like Tu Tien, they don't vanish to disappear. They disappear to survive. There's a wound she's chasing down. Don't confuse silence with surrender." He swallowed, his voice fraying. "What if she never comes back?" Mrs. Lai wrapped her hand around her teacup like it was the only warmth left in the room. "Then your duty is simple, boy. Keep the gate open, but not your chest. Don't leave your soul unlocked. Because she may return with answers, but that doesn't mean she'll bring love. Sometimes truth is all that survives the storm." That pierced him deeper than he expected. Still, Jack's voice was barely audible. "I'd rather stand in pain than close the gate and never see her again." Mrs. Lai's eyes softened, not with pity, but recognition. "Sometimes we don't walk away from places," she murmured. "We walk away from the selves we can no longer carry." Tu Tien didn't vanish, Jack. She reached a moment when silence failed to hold her together. And now she's doing what many men fear most, healing without permission. And Jack, well, he was learning a brutal truth, that to truly love someone, you must let go of the need to mend them. Love without possession, grief without entitlement. It's not weakness to wait, it's a holy defiance, the kind of strength that doesn't shout but endures. But even in waiting, one must be clear. What is it you wait for? A return, an apology, or a redemption you'll never witness? Only one of those leads to peace. This chapter dares the heart to ask, how do we protect our own ache while respecting someone else's path back to wholeness? Jack's waiting was not some soft-hearted indecision. No, it was armor. It was belief wrapped in overalls and dirt under fingernails. It was love with open palms. The corridor outside the emergency ward reeked of bleach, panic, and prayers that hadn't finished forming. Jack paced the sterile tiles like a man haunted, not by ghosts, but by choices. He had raced here, driven by something deeper than fear, after a trembling voice at the tea stall whispered of a girl brought in, struck by a delivery truck, nameless except for a fractured phone and a quiet face. Then the nurse stepped out, clipboard in hand, eyes glazed with exhaustion and detachment, the kind of look people wear when they've seen too many lives shatter before lunch. "Are you her relative?" Jack's voice faltered, barely rising above the hum of fluorescent lights. The nurse tilted her head. "No?" but I've been trying to find her." She nodded slowly. "She's stable. Consciousness comes and goes. A mild concussion, fractured arm, deep contusions." She paused, her tone softening. "And she's 8 weeks pregnant." The words shattered the silence around him like a glass dropped on tile. Pregnant, and not his. The realization hit him harder than the news itself, but instead of recoiling, Jack murmured, "Please, just make sure she's okay." Both of them. They led him into the trauma ward, and there she was, Tu Tien. Pale, still, small beneath the sterile folds of white sheets. Her dark hair, damp and matted from the rain, framed a face that once lit rooms but now seemed extinguished. One hand was curled protectively near her chest, like even in sleep, she was guarding something fragile. Jack lowered himself into the chair beside her, muscles stiff, mind racing. There were no rings on her fingers, no traces of makeup. Just bruises, some physical, some years old and buried beneath the skin. He lifted his hand to touch hers, but stopped an inch away. This wasn't a moment for forgiveness or answers. This was a moment for presence, the kind that doesn't demand explanations, only offers silent company. By evening, the sky had dimmed into a navy bruise, shadows stretching across the hospital floor when the doctor returned. "We'll continue monitoring her and the baby overnight," she said. "If anything changes, we'll alert you immediately." Jack gave a weary nod. "Any family we should notify?" He looked at Tu Tien's face, then slowly shook his head. "I think I might be the only one she has now." In the hush of that hospital room, truth settled like dust. Sometimes we don't get to choose how people re-enter our lives, but we always choose what we do when they arrive broken. To care for someone who's hurting, especially when you don't have all the answers, requires more than love. It requires restraint. Jack didn't ask whose baby it was, didn't ask why she hadn't told him. Instead, he pulled the thin hospital blanket higher and whispered, "Are you warm enough?" Because emotional maturity doesn't need to know everything. It only needs to be kind. And for those watching, those who've been hurt, left, lied to, Jack's choice wasn't dramatic. It was quieter, deeper. Love, in its truest form, doesn't always look like thunder. Sometimes, it looks like sitting in silence next to someone who once disappeared. The hospital never truly slept. Machines pulsed with gentle beeps. Monitors blinked their steady rhythms. Jack dozed fitfully in the hard-backed visitor's chair, one eye always open. His jacket lay across his lap. He hadn't left her side. Tu Tien hadn't stirred once. Inside him, a quiet war raged. Why didn't she tell me? Because she didn't know if you'd stay. Why now? Because this was the only way left to return. He rose just before dawn, standing beside her bed once more. One hand hovered near her pillow, not to touch, just to anchor himself there in that moment. A nurse came in and checked vitals. "Good news," she whispered. "The baby is strong. No signs of stress." Jack exhaled, but relief didn't settle. His heart still held too many echoes. Later, he stepped out for air and made his way to the phone repair shop, as he'd promised himself he would. Maybe the past had answers, maybe not. The technician handed him the cracked phone, reverently, like passing along a confession. "We were able to recover some data," he said. "There's a video." And just like that, Jack felt the floor beneath his world shift again. She had tried to leave behind something, anything, but the recording cut off before she could finish. Jack stared at the phone, uncertain, then hit play. The screen lit up with Tu Tien's face, puffy eyes, voice raw and cracking as if she were speaking to the wind, not anyone in particular. "Jack, I don't know if I'll ever send this, but I needed to say thank you. You made me feel safe, and that's not something I've felt in a long time. I didn't expect this pregnancy. I was terrified that if you knew, you'd disappear. I couldn't handle another loss." Then the video abruptly stopped, mid-sentence, mid-breath, mid-heartbreak. Jack exhaled, shoulders folding in on themselves. He didn't move for a long time, just stood there, letting her words wash over him. He didn't judge her, because deep down, hadn't we all kept secrets, not out of cruelty, but to hold off the pain just a little longer? Back at the hospital, Tu Tien stirred. Her lips moved slightly as if breaking the surface after drowning in silence. Jack leaned closer, her eyes opened. The moment she saw him, the tears came fast, unrestrained, born from something deeper than shame. "I didn't know how to tell you," she whispered, her voice thin, unraveling. Jack didn't answer right away. He just reached out, took her hand, and held it, steady, warm, unshakable. "You don't have to say anything now," he said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere." Even if the child wasn't his, even after the video, he stayed. Her sobs deepened, but this time they weren't tangled in guilt. They were tears of release, because forgiveness doesn't always arrive with grand declarations. Sometimes it's just a hand that refuses to let go. So many relationships aren't undone by betrayal. They crumble under the weight of fear. Fear of being seen as damaged. Fear that once the illusion fades, so will the love. But the kind of love that lasts, the kind Jack offered, makes room for the whole narrative, not just the polished pages. Emotional strength in love isn't about speaking louder. It's about hearing what's unsaid. Jack taught us that love listens with the heart, not the ego. That reacting builds distance, but empathy builds sanctuary. Would you be someone who stays like Jack, or someone who walks away? Because family, when it matters most, isn't built on biology, it's built on loyalty. The days that followed were quiet, gentle, like footsteps pressing into soft earth. Tu Tien lay in recovery, body still fragile, heart unsure whether it was allowed to hope again. But Jack remained. Every morning he brought rice porridge, steaming, fragrant, comforting. He sat by her bedside as though nowhere else existed, and each evening he spoke softly to her belly. "Hi, little one," he would begin. "I'm Uncle Jack." And somehow that simple sentence rebuilt everything that had broken. I'm not going anywhere. The morning broke with a hush, a soft rain whispering against the hospital glass. Tu Tien turned to him, her voice brittle with uncertainty. "But why would you stay?" Jack leaned in, tucking a stray lock of damp hair behind her ear. "Because love doesn't wait for perfect timing. It waits for courage." She looked away. "The baby, it's not yours." He didn't flinch. "No," he said gently, "but you are." Those words didn't just settle in her heart. They lit something in her she thought long buried. A few days later, the hospital released her. Jack offered to take her back to the house she used to call home. She hesitated. "I can't," she whispered. "That place, it's haunted by everything I lost. I'm still learning how to breathe again." He nodded without question. "Then come with me, just until you're ready. No demands, just stillness." They drove quietly to a small cottage tucked beneath the hills, a space Jack had prepared without telling anyone. It had one room, a wild garden, and two mismatched mugs that always seemed to be filled with something warm. There was silence, not the hollow kind, but the kind that wraps around grief like a woolen blanket. In the evenings, Tu Tien would sit by the window, one hand resting on her belly, the other entwined with Jack's. They rarely spoke. Some pain can't be narrated, it must be carried together. Jack never tried to rewrite her past. He mended what was broken, a loose floorboard, a tear in her heart. He planted mint and basil. He listened to her fragmented dreams. When memories came clawing through the dark, he held her steady, never asking her to forget. He didn't rescue her with grand declarations. He rescued her by staying, by showing up, by making dinner. Some heroes don't arrive with noise, they arrive with patience. Single mothers often carry their story like a scar they're forced to hide. But Jack didn't ask her to hide. He honored it. He didn't just love Tu Tien. He loved the unborn child, the symbol of her survival, of everything still possible. Family isn't always forged in blood. Sometimes it's built in quiet mornings, in the arms of someone who chooses you exactly as you are when the world didn't.